one of the other reasons why men avoid marriage is that they can lose their space. And what she meant by that was when you look at a single guy buys a house or has an apartment, the entire apartment is his living space. In many cases, and this isn't across the board, there's no attribute that you can apply universally to every human being in a certain group, but it's predominant enough that we've all seen this, we all recognize this to be true, is that men are generally relegated to the dirtiest parts of the house, the attic or the basement or the garage, or the man cave, whereas the rest of the living space is, in many men's minds, is a living space for the wife and the kids. So a lot of guys are thinking, well, if I get married, I have to give up living or being comfortable in this living space, living the way I want to live in my living space, and have to be relegated to my man cave.
You know what? I haven't heard so much of that in terms of a lot of my interaction, but it makes sense. I think that they're probably subconsciously that some of that goes on. I mean, what's a way of really preventing that sort of? How do I coach men to feel comfortable that should not be a barrier to get into a relationship? Honestly, I think really being very clear with the woman that you love and say, listen, I do enjoy my space. I do enjoy being all over the home. Is that going to be a challenge? And I did preface earlier that women tend to have this tendency to kind of control and manipulate, and men tend to want to dominate with their brute strength. And so maybe initially in a marriage or initially in a relationship, she says, yeah, that's no problem. You can share the space, or you have your space, what have you. Over time, there's scope creep, right? And use the project management term, where she slowly but surely inch and takes more space and encroach on it. But I think if you have the conversation up front and say, hey, didn't we not talk about that I can have as much space? I believe if you're clear up front, you can always point back to these times that you said, we've agreed to this. What happened here? Why are you now pushing me out? Will help make a difference. I think it's because as human beings, we don't want to go against our own word. We don't want to be seen that we're inconsistent. We don't want to see that we're hypocritical. So once people have said that I will do A, and then you tell them that, hey, you're doing B, what happened? You said you'd do A. Conscious kicks in and says, you know what, you're right. I am taking too much of this space. My apologies. But if you never have that conversation up front, you assume that she will understand that this is your space. And guess what? Your space starts to decrease, and then you're relegated. And you're like, wait, I want my space. And she's like, well, you never told me that this is how you felt.
There has to be a constant stream of communication between the husband and the wife, and not just about, hey, honey, did you pick up the bread, or you forgot to get the milk? Can you take out the garbage? I mean, that's standard stuff. That doesn't count as communication. But when the communication is nothing but that, did you buy diapers? Did you drop so and so off to her ballet lessons or whatever? If that comprises the majority of your conversation, you're not really talking to each other, and you're not talking about the issues that matter. And the longer that goes on, the more resentment develops, because, look, life situations change. You may have shared the living space in the living room. We had a big screen TV. We did all this fun stuff together. Then we had a baby, and then we had to, put the bumpers so they don't bump their heads on things, whatever. And what ends up happening is the little decisions start getting made that change the nature of that living space. And oftentimes what happens is that living space changes to support maybe the kids and maybe the mom and the dad. Well, you go work in the garage, go do something in the basement. And over time, because I've lived through this, this isn't hypothetical, I've lived through this. Over time, you start finding yourself getting relegated to the part of the house that doesn't require, that the kids aren't going to spend a lot of time in, or whatever the case might be. So it is a constant balancing act, and it is a constant level of connection that you have to have with your spouse. If you're not talking about the important things like that and reconnecting, it's a recipe for disaster. You may think you're talking, but you're talking about taking the garbage out. you're not talking. You're not having a conversation. I'm telling you right now,
Yeah.
it's not happening.
Yeah, I must admit, even I totally understand in terms of my children encroaching on my space and taking away my office. And once was my office, once my domain, they have taken it to be their playroom.
Mhm.
One way I do try to reclaim my space, and kind of putting a spin on Maxine Waters, reclaiming my time. Reclaiming my space is that I tell my children, you just don't walk into my room, right? You knock and you ask permission to come in. Uh, and I know the fact that I wouldn't, most likely I will usually tell you, yes, you can come in, but I want you to know that this part is my space. It is sacred space. And this is what we should understand. Certain spaces in my home is sacred. So toys do not land there. You have a bedroom, you have other places in the house, you just don't do it. And we agree as a couple that this is sacred space. And if it's a messy space here, let's find a way to clean it up. I think that's how for me I can probably find a level of ownership, even though I'm not necessarily in the room, but I have say on how that room should look like.
Right.
Which
You're basically establishing boundaries.
That's right. Love has so many definitions, it's kind of hard to articulate this, but let's say it this way: love can take on different forms, and love for a man is expressed through respect, and love to a woman is expressed many times through bonding. And so the conversation that needs to happen to be meaningful must be one that I feel as a man that I feel respected, and she feels like she is feeling connected. uh, if we're talking on those sort of identity levels, then we're truly having a conversation. And so, to your point about, did you take out the diapers? That can be so much trivial. But if you said, did you take out the diapers? I really appreciate what you do that for me. That changes. That becomes more relational because now there's a respectful conversation that I feel. And not to say women don't look for respect, but there's something endemic in men to look for feeling that they're lifted up, and there's something endemic in women that feel like they're being connected and bonding, right?
So you hit on a very interesting topic because I had this conversation in a show just recently with Travis and Michelle. We're talking about reviving the sex life in a marriage, and one of the things we talked about was that for men, generally speaking, some men will say, "This isn't me," but okay, I can't speak on behalf of all, the entire population of men across the planet. But generally speaking, for men, respect has a higher priority for them than love. Of course, you want to be loved, you want to be in a loving relationship, but if you don't feel like you're respected as a man, you're not going to be happy in that relationship. And one of the things we talked about was it's very rare for a guy to hear, "Thank you, I appreciate what you did." And I said to him, when she said that to you, what was your reaction? He said, "I just got a chill." It is so rare for a guy to hear from his wife, "Honey, I appreciate what you did for me," that a lot of women, I think, take for granted that he must know because I love him and I'm married to him. Well, you must know that I love you, so I don't have to tell you either. It's something it's valuable to say to a guy, "Hey, I appreciate you. Thanks for taking out the garbage. Thanks for picking up the bread. Thanks for making certain we have a retirement savings plan so we can retire at 58 or whatever the case might be." Something as simple as that goes a long way to keeping the bridge in that relationship alive and keeping it open.
Yeah, and I know people say love and respect, men look for respect and women look for love. I just want to kind of tweak that the definition and say that both gender look for love, but how that love is expressed, which is more respect versus the more of the connecting and the bonding of that love. That's the piece. So for us, love, we interpret it, to use that sort of Gary Chapman love language. We do interpret love in terms of the value, feeling that there is worth, that sense of esteem that comes with that woman said, "You know what, you did a great job. I really appreciate you." I know women tend to look at those sort of compliments as a quid pro quo. Sometimes it's like, well, he hasn't done this for me, so I'm not going to say that in turn. Uh, that's where marriage, we really got to remember our vows, for better, for worse. And it's not about who is right, but it's about what is right. And if we are committed to being integral, men or women, then we trust in the process of being integral people of character, that our love for this person, that it would tweak, remind us that, hey, I have fallen short in valuing this person, valuing this woman, valuing this man. I remember I told you about a conversation that we had in our men's group, that we talked about what Black women and Black men, what's the disconnect, and why are we talking past each other, and why are Black men specifically are venturing out and marrying everyone else, but not the Black women. And a lot of it goes back to that whole idea of we don't feel respected, and sometimes this idea of being too strong has been articulated, that I don't need you, you're less than me. Certainly nowadays, Black women are making more money than Black men, so that piece all becomes even more important, because what am I bringing to the table if it's not money? Definitely, there's got to be a character component, but you're not even acknowledging that. So that's a piece that I know that's very important. But from Black women's point of view, one thing they did share is our unwillingness to recognize that the strength that the Black women have wasn't strength that was necessarily brought out from current feminism, but a strength that has been cultivated over the years during slavery, cultivated whether it be African American slavery or Afro Caribbean slavery, that the Black women had to be strong for the family because they were being broken by the slave master when the families was being ripped apart and they were raising the slave master's child. They had to be strong. Their mothers had to be strong. Their grandmothers had to be strong. So they bring a lot of that strength in there, not necessarily from contemporary influences, but from historical influences. Now, it has sometimes been perverted, and that's what the evil one does. He perverts what's our strengths and make it become a weakness. But I think we forget that as Black men, that's a strength that's been good, that has been carried over of a legacy. So how do we tap into that and not feel threatened and feel intimidated, and be able to work with each other and understand that God would want us to look at these sort of strengths and find ways that we could create a synergy and intersectionality where we can move together.
You know, I've done the online dating thing, and you read enough profiles where, you know, you're reading the profile. Obviously, you know, I date women, I don't date men, but the profile reads, you know, I've got a great job, I've got a great career, da, 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 da. The kind of things that you would expect would be considered check marks for a guy.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of women have themselves convinced that, wow, this is going to impress them. You know, I've got this, I've got that, got my degree in this, I have a PhD in that, da, da, da. And at the end of the day, you know, masculine traits are not attractive to masculine men. If they were, then he'd be dating men. Strength, I think, and this is just my perspective, and I think some guys might agree with this, that is, what's attractive to a masculine man or male is a feminine female. That is her strength. Having her replicate my characteristics, you know, we both have the same masculine traits. Well, that's great. You know, let's arm wrestle and go play baseball, but we're not going to get married because I don't see you in that light. You know, I'm not attracted to that, or else I'd be attracted to my guy friends. I'm attracted to what you bring that I don't have, that complements me, and I'm hoping that what I bring to the table is what you're attracted to. You constantly hear we're looking for real man. Well, okay, well, I'm not looking for real man too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And as you were talking, I was actually reading through some of those points where what men are looking for. I'm reading from the Millionaire Mind, and what Dr. Stanley wrote here in terms of males versus females, important qualities that initially interest millionaires and their spouses. And he has this list here, and he wrote down in order of least importance to more important. So high income earning potential, ambitious, well-dressed, virtuous, wealthy, self-disciplined, frugal, secure, cheerful, encouraging. And he talked about all these. And when I'm looking through the list, apparently high income earning potential for guys looking for women, that's low. Ambitious, that's generally speaking 48%. Well-dressed, but encouraging and cheerful were the highest.
List.
Yeah, highest high on the list. and vice versa, actually, too, for women, having a cheerful guy and an encouraging guy. So the very things that we would think that are very trivial, that I want a guy that's very upbeat and positive, is very much the quality that people who attain good wealth were looking for in their spouse. Someone that's cheerful, someone's encouraging. And you think, well, that makes sense, right? Because life is tough and we want people to be in our corner. Uh, the well dressed, I mean, there's always the physical side of things, but at the end of the day, it's holistic. And the more important piece is someone that's going to be in a corner, whether no matter what gender, men and women look for people that are encouraging. That's just oxygen for the soul, right? And when you are deprived of that oxygen, you're going to walk out of the marriage. I would submit to those who don't want to be in a marriage. I mean, marriage is not perfect, and it shouldn't be perfect because it's two imperfect people trying to create a perfect relationship, right? Uh, if we are committed to doing the right things by each other, you just create the likelihood of staying together. If you get up every day, and this is the thing, I think for men, we just don't appreciate that. We don't see our relationship as the primary job of our lives. And I tell any person, how do I know I'm ready to get married? How do I know I'm ready for a long-term relationship? Are you willing to die for this person? And are you willing to make this person the center of your life? Not in the sense of losing yourself, but center of your life in the sense that my focus and attention is to ensure that this person's taken care of. And that comes before my job, even though my job is important to serve that person. If you can't answer those two questions, if you're not willing to die for that person, you're not ready, right? And that's okay. And you can continue on and just be in those sort of relationships. But I think we just lost the idea of treating our promises, taking our promises seriously, and really remember the words of Christ that uh, He laid out His life for the church, that we may do likewise for each other, and especially for men. If we can't lay down our life for the one that we say that we could take care of, then yeah, maybe we are mature enough to walk into that relationship.
I think there are 2 points. The one you made just now is just maturity, and there is an absence of maturity in both sexes. We have a lot
Mm-hmm.
of men who stop emotionally growing at 16 and they turn 45 and they're still 16. And there are a lot of women who also emotionally stop growing at about 19 and turn 48 and they're still 19.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that element of it. I think it's in men's nature, generally speaking. We've just been groomed this way from a societal perspective for thousands of years
Yeah,
to put yourself in harm's way for those people that you love.
that's right.
Um, a father will put himself in harm's way for his children
Mm-hmm.
and for a woman that he loves. The critical element there is trust.
Mm-hmm.
He will do it for someone who he trusts has his back. He will have her back come hell or high water if he knows he can trust her and vice versa. In the situation where, let's pretend they're both mature people, but there isn't a high degree of trust there, to your point, it's an act of faith to think that, well, I will risk life and limb for this person. I don't know if they would do the same for me, but it's an act of faith, and some men are willing to take that leap. Um, some men are just not until they get the sense that I really can't trust this person when I'm not looking. They're still doing what they say that they'd be doing.
I just my hopes for us in our community as Black men is to, as my friend said, that everyone grows, but not everyone grows up. And how do we help men to grow up, especially Black men, in light of all the pressures that are out there? How do we help women and Black women to recognize that they too need to grow up? Just because you are the fairer sex, quote unquote, doesn't mean you have the corner market on being emotionally mature. Uh, you two need to go to a level of growth. Let us do this together. Let's have the conversation such that we are going to be better for our children. Because children, what I've understood, uh, are most impacted from the way that mom and dad love each other. Not so much what they say to them specifically, but if children feel like that the relationship between mom and dad is frayed, they think they did it, and they hold that against themselves and everything else that comes with it.
Enjoyed the show? Like, share and subscribe. And thanks for joining us in The Man Cave.